Hey guys, hey, it's Anne Marie, the Anti-HR, and greetings from Cape Town, South Africa. I wasn't planning to make a lot of content while I'm here, but I'm a little bit behind in my content creation, so I will be shooting a couple videos from here. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about Sinners. And I know I did a post and you guys talked back to me in the comments about my post, but I want to talk a little bit more about the movie because I can't stop thinking about this movie since I saw it. I went to see it on Friday. My kid and I went for the matinee to see it. And we talked about it all weekend. And then we went back to see it on Monday. And I saw it again the day that I was going out of the country because I just couldn't, we were just talking about it. And I wanted to see it again. And I'm glad I saw it for a second time because I feel like when you see a movie initially, you always miss things, right? And going back to see it the second time, I enjoyed it even more because there were no surprises anymore. There were no jump scares. I knew it was going to happen. It let me really focus on really immersing myself in everything I was seeing and feeling in real time. And I almost went to see it again today in Cape Town, South Africa, because a group of the people that I'm on the trip with went to see it, but I decided not to see it today because I want to get some rest after the long flight. But I may see it again while I'm here at some point. I think it's an instant classic. I think this is a movie that people are going to talk about for a very long time. This is a movie that there will be courses and dissertations and curriculums created around the messaging and the subtext of this movie. I want to congratulate Ryan Coogler on creating a masterpiece, right? And I also want to congratulate Michael B. Jordan for his portrayal of the Smokestack Twins. It was, I think, also a performance that will be talked about for a very long time. One of the things that really impressed me about what he did with those two characters is that they were two distinct people. And as you watch the movie, as I watched the movie, I could tell them apart without them even speaking. When they were on the screen, I knew which was which, and it wasn't based on the clothes that they were wearing. It was the way that they carried themselves. Smoke had a very specific way and mannerisms, and Stack was a completely different person from him. And for someone to create two distinct characters in a single movie is a really quite an undertaking. And he did a phenomenal job. I am not holding my breath that he will be nominated for an Academy Award, but he deserves to be. I don't know if he deserves to win one because I don't know what other performances are going to happen for the rest of 2025, but I would definitely say that he deserves an Academy Award nomination. But this movie was released in April. A lot of times the movies that they decide should get Academy Award consideration come out in the fall months. So I don't know that he will get one, but God knows he deserves it. And I don't care what other performances come out this year. I believe he deserves a nomination. I don't know if he deserves to win one yet, but I definitely think he deserves a nomination, and Ryan Coogler deserves a nomination as well. But you know how they do us, so we can't hold our breath to get that kind of consideration from them. But I definitely see lots of NAACP awards in their future, right? Because it's an outstanding performance that he gave, a masterclass performance, and just it's a masterpiece in my opinion, right? And I don't throw that term around lightly, but it is easily now in the top 10 favorite movies for me of all time, right? And so I definitely feel that it's quite something, and there were just so many messages. And so I just want to talk a little bit about some of the things that stood out to me that I think are worth considering, because there's a lot of messages. There's certain messages that were obvious, like, the vampires to me represent, the whites in our society who have spent their entire existence literally sucking our culture away and stealing our culture, gentrifying, stealing, not giving us credit, and very knowingly doing it, especially in the music business, right? And there was a lot of music in this film. There was a centering on the blues, but not just the blues, right? And we'll get to that scene in a minute. Obviously, if you have not seen the movie, I would say stop watching this. Don't watch it, because I'm going to be talking about the movie in depth, and I will be mentioning things that happened in the movie. So if you haven't seen the movie, run, don't walk, go see it, but don't watch this video because I don't want to spoil it for you. Okay? Now, first things that jump out to me, first of all, the things that I loved about it, and I love the entire movie, so there's nothing I have to say that I didn't love about it, but I'm going to talk about the things that jumped out at me. Obviously, to me, the vampires represented whites, right? Europeans, and the way in which that they have literally stolen or tried to steal our culture from us, right? But there are lots of other messaging. So, for example, Remick, the protagonist the antagonist in the movie is Remick the vampire. He's not the only antagonist, but he's the primary antagonist in the film. He shows up on the scene. He shows up at the doors of a white couple who are Klan members, right? And they let him in. And the movie, exists on the subtext that a lot of the lore that you hear of vampires is true, that you have to invite them in, that they don't like garlic, that silver bullets will kill them, stakes, all of that stuff. And there are lots of different vampire movies, and some have different rules, but in this movie, that was a basic premise. So he asked them to let him in. They let him in. On his heels are some Choctaw Indians, native Indians, who come to the door, and the woman answers the door with a shotgun in her hand, and they try to tell her that there's a very dangerous stranger about. And she basically tells them to get off her property, and they don't argue with her, they leave. And I love that messaging, that as native people who are the first people in the Americas, they knew the danger. They tried to warn these people. These people didn't want to listen. They saw the sun was setting, and they got the hell up out of there and left. They didn't try to convince them. They didn't try to save people who didn't want to be saved. And I really believe that that was a great message in the movie, that don't try to save people who don't want to be saved. If you try to tell somebody something, give somebody some information, and they don't want to receive the information, don't endanger your own self to give them the information. Let them go on to their own demise. So I love that message early in the movie. Now, my favorite character in the movie, no surprise here, is Annie. And Annie is the wife of, it's not clear whether I think she is his wife, of Smoke. And I'm not going to get into the love scene that was so, it was beautiful, but it was also very intimate, that I almost felt like, should I be watching this? But it was beautifully shot. Needless to say, it really made me happy to see, for the first time in my adult life, and this is the first time in my adult life, and people can correct me in the comments if they can tell me of another movie that this has happened, but this is the first time in my adult life that I have gone to the cinema and seen a dark-skinned, natural hair, full-figured Black woman as a central love interest, romantic character, where she's the partner and the love of a main character who loves her deeply. She's his plaything. She's not there to be the jokester. She's not there to be the plaything that he then leaves for the light-skinned woman. She is his world, right? I've never seen that before. In my entire adult 50 plus years of life, going to the movies by myself since I was about 15 or 16 years old, I have never, ever seen that in a movie. So needless to say, it filled my heart with joy. It filled my heart with joy. And it also, I felt like it was a relationship portrayed as a respectful relationship. A relationship of two people who respected each other, who loved each other, who trusted each other. And I loved that, because to me, that is the depiction of a majority of healthy Black male, Black female relationships, including the relationship I grew up witnessing with my parents. That is not a relationship one always gets to see in media, that they try to make us think that Black families are dysfunctional, that Black women and Black men don't love each other, that we don't get along. If you're on social media for any amount of time, that's what people try to tell you. I know it's not true because I haven't seen it in my own life. I come from a family of intact marriages, especially on my father's side. People who've been married 25, 30, 40, 50, 60 years or more. Black men and Black women who have raised children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren who love and respect each other. So I know it's BS, but I think some of us in our community buy into some of these narratives. So it was really beautiful to see not just one dark-skinned, beautiful, dark-skinned black woman as a romantic interest, but two, right? Because there's also the relationship between Preacher Boy and Pearline, okay? It's not a central, but as central as Annie and Smoke, but it's central. And I love the fact that she was a woman who said that she both prayed and did her, her magic to try to protect the man that she loved while he was absent. So she believed in God, but she also believed in, the ancient beliefs that many were brought over from the continent, that black people have been convinced they shouldn't believe, that that's, diabolical and that's satanic and that's bad, but white Jesus is who you should cling to. But we won't get into that. I've already said what I think about white supremacy and Christianity in another video. Y'all can go watch that one. But I love the messaging there also. And there's a very central scene near the end of the movie where Remick is literally baptizing Preacher Boy, if you will, dipping him into the water and pulling him out. And Preacher Boy starts reciting the Lord's Prayer. And Remick starts reciting it right along with him. And the other people who have also been turned into vampires start reciting it as well. And the messaging there was, to me, it was twofold. The devil knows the Bible probably even better than most Christians do. That's the first thing, because if you believe in the Bible, then you know that Satan was once an angel, right? And also that the other underlying message is how Christianity was used to destroy not just black people and black communities, but Irish communities. Now, I've been to Ireland, so I've had the opportunity to learn more about their culture and their history and what happened to them when the British showed up. And the things, and Catholicism, among other things, were inflicted on them in an attempt to take their culture away from them as well. And the vampire mentions it because Remick is Irish. And I love the fact that they brought some of that historical backdrop into the story. That black people are not the only oppressed people in the world. And I think sometimes we forget that. And this is not oppression Olympics. I'm not saying as oppressed, more oppressed. I'm saying that our community is not the only community that has been oppressed by whites and Europeans. Everywhere that they have ever landed in the world, they have oppressed the people that they came and met there. And so, if you know anything about Irish history, you know that horrible things were done to the Irish, right? And you also know what they did to the first people, not just in the Americas, but everywhere they went, right? Whether it was Asia, whether it was Africa, whether it was to the Americas, they tried to turn the people they found into their slaves. And they tried to take, and took their land, not tried. Either they tried and succeeded, or they tried and failed, and they stole their land. These are just facts. They're not things that you can argue with. These are things that actually happened. Right? And so I think him bringing that in as part of the subtext of the movie, I thought was really, really interesting and great. And that religion was used, Christianity specifically, was used to achieve enslaving other people and stealing their culture and killing other people, whether in Ireland, in the Americas, or elsewhere. Right? So I found that particular scene really, really telling. The scene that probably, besides the scene that I'm going to talk about, and you all know what the scene is if you've seen the movie, but the scene that moved me the most, the one that actually brought me to tears, was the scene in the car where Delta Slim, Stack, and Preacher Boy are driving to where the juke joint is, and they're picking people up along the way, and it's before they pick Cornbread up, right? That Delta Slim tells the story of how they passed the chain gang, right? And they still have, I believe, do they still have chain gangs in the South? I'm not sure if they still have them, but I wouldn't be surprised if they do, right? But they passed the chain gang, and Delta Slim tells the story of how his friend was lynched at a railroad station. That basically he and his friend were arrested. They were forced to perform for white people's entertainment. They were paid. Delta Slim said he took all his money and used it to buy liquor, but his friend thought that he would leave town and go somewhere else so he could get a better life. He got stopped by some white men in the train station. When they realized he had all that money on him, they basically made up a story, accused him of attacking one of the white men and raping his wife so that they could take his money, and then they lynched him right in the railroad station. And he's telling the story and the pain in his voice, and he slaps his leg as he's telling, as he tells the story, and then he starts to hum. And when he started to hum, I started to cry. It was just an amazing scene where he conveyed the pain in the ancestral pain and the pain, the trauma of an individual man as well as a group of people without even saying a word. And to me, that was actually the scene that really got me. Now, obviously, the scene where Preacher Boy sings and literally calls forth past and present and future ancestors and the future musicians, and they're all in the same scene, and the roof literally catches fire. The roof is on fire. The roof literally catches a flame. That is probably one of the most phenomenal scenes I've ever seen on film, anytime, in any movie, at any place, and anywhere, right? That scene alone will be written about, dissertations will be written, the theses will be written, etc., right? It goes without saying. But that scene in the car is the one that really got to me. And I can't say why, but that's the scene that really, really, really got to me in the movie. But the scene where he's literally singing, and you see the DJ spinning, the beatboxing, the girls twerking, the people from Asia and China and Africa. It's overwhelmingly, especially the second time I saw it, an overwhelmingly beautiful love letter to our culture, to our music, to the blues, to who we are as people, as Black people. And I absolutely loved it. But that scene in that car damn near did me in, especially the second time I saw it. So I think those are the main, my favorites. Now, let me talk a little bit about a couple characters that stood out besides Annie and Smoke. And Smoke was probably my favorite male character in the movie. And Annie was my favorite female character. But I want to talk about Mary. And, I've seen a lot of conversations, comments, arguments on social media, on threads particularly, about the character of Mary. And Mary is a white passing woman. But, people will argue about whether she's white or she's Black. In my opinion, she's not white and she's not Black. She's definitely not Black. She's a woman who says that her grandfather was half Black, right? So if her grandfather was half Black, that makes her what, 1/8 Black? And I guess at that time in 1932, she would have been considered, if you apply the one-drop rule, that she would have been considered Black. But for all intents and purposes, that's not a Black person. She's a white passing person. She's a person who made a choice that she wanted to be Black, that she loved a man that was Black. She wanted to be with Black people, but wanting to be something doesn't make you that thing, right? So, but what the message to me, the character of Mary, is how dangerous those who we choose to embrace because we wish to. I think that as Black people, we have a tendency to want to embrace anybody who embraces us. So if somebody says their great-grandpa was Black, we immediately want to adopt them as being Black, right? Somebody says their grandfather was half Black, which the character and the actress who plays her has a grandfather who's half Black, right? But that woman is no more Black right now than the character in the movie is, in my opinion, right? However, as Black people, we have a tendency to want to embrace anybody who shows an appreciation. It's literally that whole inviting people to the cookout. And I do think one of the messages in the movie is about how dangerous that is, to be just inviting people in. And Mary had a relationship from childhood with those men, with the twins. And because of that, she invited herself to the juke joint. She was not invited there. They let her in. Cornbread let her in because he knew her from when she was a kid, growing up with the twins, right? But remember that she was not invited. She invited herself because of proximity to the black people that she had grown up with. She invited herself and was let in. Then, when the vampires showed up and tried to get in, they weren't allowed in. They were told to leave. But then she offers to go and find out whether they are good people who she can get to come back, because they realized that they were short, right? They were not making as much money as they thought they were going to make that night, because they were accepting plantation coins rather than real money. They were also taking the plantation currency, because a lot of the plantations, instead of paying the sharecroppers real money, would pay them tokens that they could only use at the plantation to buy things, right? Instead of giving them their money. Just yet another way in which black people were taken advantage of, right? Was to give them tokens that were only good at the plantation where they were picking cotton, and they chose to accept those plantation currency over Smoke's. Smoke did not want to do it, but both Annie and Stack convinced him that he should. And then they found, as they were counting up how much money they had made, that they were short because they accepted it. So she just offers to go and talk to them, to the vampires, which she doesn't know are vampires, to see whether or not they would be willing to pay a certain amount of money to get in, to try to help them make the money up that they had lost, right? As soon as she said she would go out, I literally turned to my kid and said, she's the one that's going to bring death into the door. And because that's what white proximity does. And of course, that's exactly what happened. So the person who is white passing goes out to talk to the white people because she thinks she is better able to talk to them than the black people. She gets bitten and turned. And then she gets back in because they invite her in without question, because they also believe that she's one of them. They being the black people. The cornbread at the door lets her in because he knows her. All right, so when she asks, are you going to let me in? He says, sure, and lets her in. And that's her invitation, and that's how she gets back in. And then all hell breaks loose, right? Then she kills and turns Stack, and all hell breaks loose. So the moral of the story for me is, we as black people need to stop inviting everybody to the cookout. And we need to stop trying to embrace everybody that wants to be black, right? Everybody that shows an affinity for blackness, even people who genuinely love everything about our culture, don't necessarily need to be invited to the cookout. I always say you could give people a plate, but you don't have to give them the recipe. You could give them a plate, but you don't have to invite them to the cookout, right? We need to do a little bit more gatekeeping, in my opinion. And that movie, to me, one of the messages, big messages and takeaways, was about how white proximity can literally kill. The seeking of white proximity can literally result in your demise. And so pretty much everyone in that movie died except for one person. And it all started with her going outside to talk to them white people, because she thought that she had enough proximity to them that she was the person who should go out there and talk to them. And then she brought death to everyone else. A lot of people want to talk about Grace, the Asian lady, the Chinese lady, who actually invited them in near the end, right? But I actually don't blame Grace, because I understand as a parent where that motivation might have come from, that these people threatened to go turn her daughter, right? They turned her husband, and then they threatened to go turn, Remick threatened to turn her daughter. I could understand how she would be like, we gonna have it out right now, because I don't want those people anywhere near my kid, right? But that's not where the problems began. The problems began when Miss Mary decided that she wanted to go out and be the negotiator and have a conversation. That's where the problems began, right? One could argue it began when he decided to get involved with that woman, but I'm not even gonna go there, right? I would just say the real problem in the movie began when she decided to go find out what these people were really about. And that's what brought death to pretty much everyone that night. So for me, one of the biggest takeaways was, don't let them in the door. Nothing good can come from it. And the other takeaway was, white proximity can kill. White proximity can literally kill you, right? And there, those are just some of my takeaways, but that was a big one, and what I kind of thought about that character. A lot of Black people have a tendency to romanticize biracial people. There's a reason they call them the tragic mulatto. There's a whole genre of stories and books that are based on what they call the quote tragic unquote mulatto, right? And we as Black people have a tendency to romanticize biracial people and to put them on a pedestal. See Barack Obama. Don't come for me. I'm just telling y'all how it is, and others, right? And what I'm saying is, sometimes that could be to our own detriment as a community. Not all the time, but in that movie, it was to their detriment, right? That the white passing woman decided to go outside and have a confab with the vampires. It ended up killing everybody, except at the end, her and the person she turned. Everybody else died, pretty much, except her, the person she turned, Stack, and Preacher Boy. Everybody else died that was in that juke joint. Everybody. Okay? Everybody died. Smoke didn't die in the juke joint, but he died right after that. So basically, everybody died because she decided to go outside and have a chitty chat. And I know, there would be no movie, there would be no story if that hadn't happened. But I'm just saying, the point is, for me, the biggest takeaway is white proximity can kill you. And be careful who you let in. Even people that look like they might be okay could result in your demise. So those are just some of my favorite takeaways from the movie. Feel free to throw in more. Like I said, I may actually go see it one more again. There are many other takeaways. We could get into the whole discussion about the father and the son, Preacher Boy's father, the guitar, what does the guitar symbolize? There's so much, but I don't want to make this video too long. So I just shared, those are my favorite takeaways from the movie. They're not at all by any means the only takeaways. There are so many. Like I said, this movie to me is an instant classic. It is a movie that people will be talking about for at least the rest of the spring into summer. It is a movie that colleges will be writing, people will be writing papers about. There will be theses and dissertations, and a gazillion think pieces are already being written. Some of them are great and some of them are ridiculous, but everybody has a right to their opinion. But I definitely feel like if you haven't seen the movie, I hope you're not watching this. If you have seen the movie and you plan to go see it again, tell me in the comments. But tell me what your favorite takeaways are, because I know I haven't mentioned there's so many more. There's so many more I could talk about. But those are my favorites. So I love the movie. I thought it was fabulous. I have nothing negative to say about it. I think that if you haven't seen it, you should go see it. If you have seen it, go see it again. Support Black film. I read that Ryan Coogler cut a deal with Warner Brothers that allowed him to own this movie, own the intellectual property on this movie, that full ownership of the film will revert to him in 25 years. And that he has a deal that's very similar to what the big, white directors get. So I say kudos to Ryan for cutting a good, negotiating a good deal for himself. I think that he is visionary. I think this film is just, I don't have enough superlatives to give this movie. So all I will say is support this film, not just because it's a Black film, but because it's a great film, period. I believe this movie could have only been made by a Black person. It only could have been made by a Black person. The symbolism, the story, the messaging, it could only have been done by one of us. And I'm so grateful to be alive to watch it. I'm in South Africa right now, and I'm thinking a lot about my best friend who passed away almost 2 years ago. It'll be 2 years in December. And how much she loved South Africa, how much she wanted me to be here, how much I miss her, and how much I wish she were here to see this movie. She would have loved this movie so much. So I'm really grateful to be in South Africa, to be in Cape Town for the first time. I'm grateful to have seen this film twice already. I'm just grateful, period. I'm thankful to all of you who support my channel, who support my work. And so I'm just sitting here in gratitude this morning, because it's morning time, early in the morning here in South Africa, and I'm getting ready to go to sleep. But I want to make sure that I did this video while this was top of mind for me. Thanks so much to those of you who support this channel. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.